Okay. Good evening, and now we're ready to start. Chapter 3. So, briefly, let's just recap, like we were saying the previous weeks, that at the end of every one of these chapters, at least the first four, we can finish the sentence, the purpose of mitzvahs is blank. So in the first week, we learned that the purpose of mitzvahs is to teach us self-control. In the second week, we learned that the purpose of mitzvahs is to connect us with God. And now we are going to learn a third perspective on what mitzvahs do. Call it a function. Third function of what mitzvahs do. So chapter 3, which is on page 27, the purpose of creation. The question, what is the purpose of creation, has engaged the attention of thinkers and philosophers of all ages. This question is closely linked with the question, what is man's function in design of creation? So in other words, number one, what's the purpose of creation in general? And question two, what's the purpose of my creation and your creation, the purpose of man? As may be expected, Chabad deals with both of these questions at great length. Briefly, the explanation zu gesund is as follows. Before the universe was created, there was only God alone, the perfect unity filling all space, including the space of the world subsequently created. God remained unchanged after the creation. What was new were the created things which received existence and life from his infinite light. Only after the light and life emanating from him had been so reduced and minimized in quotations as to be in a position as good evening, Panina, been so reduced and minimized. We're now just got to the top of page 28, as to be in a position to give life and energy to earthly and corporeal creations. Thus, a series of worlds were created, one coarser than the other, successively concealing the light and life emanating from the Creator, until there came into being our own material and corporeal world, which is the lowest, where the divine light is most concealed, and the darkest of dark, so much so that it's possible for things to exist in the world which are in defiance of God. Okay, let's take this apart. Let's talk for a second. So there's a core difference between everything that we know as creations and God, not just as creator, but as God. So us as creations, we are, I'm thinking of the Hebrew word that the Rambam uses. There's efshari hametzias and mechuyev hametzias. You have a circumstantial existence, and you have not circumstantial, but a definite, a must-be existence. People, the world could exist without one person or 100 people. The world could exist without us. The proof is that many of the previous generations, they're gone, and the world has continued to exist. God, on the other hand, is not that type of existence. The world could not exist without God. God could exist without a world, but the world could not exist without God. So there was a point, I want to say before, there was a point in time, but it's not really a point in time, because time is also a creation. The world, the definition of the world is time, space, and life. So there was a point when there was only God. There was no world. And God made a conscious decision to create the world. And the question is why? And so what we just read is that God's infinite light, it's impossible for people to exist as we know, seeing an infinite God. We wouldn't have any temptations. We would lose our free will. See, not to mention, could we even exist, period? It's like, I give the example to my kids of, the electricity running in the street. You don't touch they have the big boxes that cover the electricity. Don't touch that. That is too much for a person to handle. And even if you try touching your phone to it, it's going to fry your phone. It's too much light. And so when God created the world, a similar type of thing happened, where God reduced his infinite light to create space for a world to exist. And God did such a good job of reducing his infinity. He did such a good job of reducing his infinity that you can even have a world now where people deny the existence of God. That you can't get lower than that. That is like the ultimate low. So, where does that leave us? On the top of 28, since our world is the last and lowest in the chain of creation, below which there is no other, it follows that our material world is the main object of creation. So number one, we've established that our world, there are higher worlds. You have worlds where angels exist. Heaven is where souls exist. There are other places. Good evening, Earth. There are other places, if that's the right word, other worlds. But in those other worlds, we're on page 28, by the way, top of 28 in the book, the Divine Commandments. Our world is the last and lowest in the chain of these worlds. All those other worlds are higher, because indeed the worlds of angels don't have free will. I was actually talking with someone yesterday who he was talking from a Christian perspective, but he asked me, do angels have free will? I said, absolute not. And he said, oh, well, Christianity, they do. Like, well, all right. But no, angels don't have free will because they see God. Just like if you knew that God was watching you, if you could feel God watching, if you could see God, you wouldn't exist the way that you do now. It would be impossible. So once we've established, and I'm sorry, give me a second to come back into this. If we've established that this world is the lowest world, why is it the lowest world? Maybe there's a world. We know that there are worlds of angels higher than us, but how do we know that there isn't a world that's lower than us? So here's how I think of it. What is the ultimate truth? If you want, you can. The ultimate truth is God's existence. That is the ultimate truth. So what's the ultimate untruth?
God doesn't.
To deny God's existence. And that's here. That can happen here. So it's impossible that there could be a world that's lower than our world. Now there's another principle, and that's a very basic principle of investment. I have two investment opportunities for you. One investment opportunity is that if you invest $100, there's not guaranteed, but you will get $1,000 back in 5 months, 6 months. And the other opportunity is that if you invest $500, you will make $1,000 in 6 months. Which one is a better investment? Here, let me say it again. You have two options. Either you can invest $100 and in 6 months you'll make back $1,000. You'll get $1,000 back. Or you can give $500 now and in 6 months you'll get $1,000 back.
It's the same thing.
What? It's not the same thing.
100.
What? Of course you'd take 100. Of course you'd want to invest 100. If you're investing $100 and getting back $1,000, then you made $900.
Right.
And if you invested $500 and you make back $1,000, then you only made $500. But that's not even the point. The point over here, it's not how much money you're making. The point is that if you could get the same return with less investment, of course you would take less investment.
Okay.
Maybe you would put 500 to make $5,000, but for sure that you always want to invest the minimum amount necessary in order to get the maximum amount of gain. That's just right. Buy low, sell high. That's 101 of investment. So if God, so to speak, is reducing his infinity, there's an infinite God, and he's reducing his infinity to create space for a world. And not just one world, but a whole series of worlds. Now, you might call that an investment. God reducing himself, holding God's infinity, God for holding himself back, he's hurting himself, so to speak. The pain of constricting himself and making himself look finite. That's difficult, so to speak, whatever difficult means. And so if God's doing that, there must be a purpose. Because there was a point at which there was no time, and there was no space, and there was no world, and there was no life. And so God made a conscious decision to minimize himself, to reduce his infinity, to make space for this world, in order that in this world, in order to make space for a world. Now, if the purpose of creation is for the worlds that are higher up, if the purpose of creation is for heaven, then why did God continue creating, reducing himself more? God didn't just invest $100 in creating a heaven. God invested $500 in creating this world. And so that's the proof that there cannot be anything lower than this world. This is where the gain, obviously, if God felt it necessary to invest so much to make a world that's so low, the purpose of creation has got to be here, not in any higher world. So I don't. The purpose of this was just to establish this world is the lowest world, and that this lowest world is the purpose of creation. The lowest world must be the purpose of creation. Okay. Moreover, and this is in the middle of 28, moreover, the chain of various worlds, one lower than the other one, cannot have been created for the sake of the higher worlds, for as created entities, the light of God radiates within them is less at its source. They can never rise above the level at which their status had been permanently fixed. Rather, the chain must have been created for this, our lowest world, where man was given the power to subjugate the forces of evil, to turn darkness into light, a light which would seem brighter by virtue of the very contrast with darkness. In this way, man was given the opportunity to rise above the level of even the higher worlds. So, it says in the prophets, and I forget offhand which prophet it is, but it talks about the angels, about being standing creatures. The angels are standing creatures, and the people are called movers. They're mahalchim, the movers. And the reason is because angels, being in that state, yes, the higher worlds are higher, but they're not, as the word stagnant, or they're stagnant, stationary. Whatever level they're at, that's where they're at. And even though it actually says, I don't want to get too complicated now, there are places that say that the souls, that's why we say Kaddish after someone passes away, that their soul is going higher and higher. But all of the elevations that happen in heaven, they're all linear. They're all in a line. There's no jumping. This world, the world that has all of this darkness, this is where someone could go from all the way from the bottom all the way to the top, materially and also spiritually. A person can reach higher in this world. So therefore, similarly, and this is on the bottom of 28, similarly, the logic to deduce that it is logical to deduce that the human being is the object of our world, since we were the last to be created. If you go look in the book of Genesis, in the story of creation, there was light and dark and all the other, and the birds and the fish, all of they were created first. And then all of the animals were created. On the sixth day of creation, God created all the animals. And the last thing to be created was man. So going again to this, the last thing is always going to be the purpose. Because if not, then why would you continue going further? Right? So, furthermore, since we were last to be created, being produced, preceded by the animal kingdom, vegetable kingdom, and mineral kingdom. So, um, everything else was created before us. So, if we're last, it must be that this is the purpose. And, it's just another way to say it. We just finished, we made this little shul last year in the side of our house. And it's like, okay, you're working day after day, and you come back and you go, you put in, you do all the plumbing and you do all the electrical. Okay, should we stop now? No, because this is not the purpose. The purpose is to have a shul that looks beautiful, an office that's functional. Okay, so continue throwing up the drywall, throwing in installation. Okay, are we done yet? No, because, but it's costing more. You could have a place. You can have a place. You've already closed it in. You've already insulated it. No. Until you're done, the finished product is what I want, nothing less. And that's why I'm going to continue every single day, going back to work to go finish it. And then we're going to paint it, and we're going to do the baseboards, and we're going to do all the small little things, and we're going to get the artwork for the walls, and we're going to get every little piece. The last thing, that's what I wanted. Now I have that shul that I want. Now I have that office. This is the purpose of everything. So God's creating the world. Oh, there's light. Is that the purpose? No. Keep on going. Create. Okay, we're gonna create. We split the waters upper and lower. We're gonna throw in fish. We're gonna throw in birds. We're gonna throw in animals. We're gonna everything. Keep on going. All the plants. And then the last thing, people are here. Okay, now Vayuchulu Hashemayim v'Haaretz. Now God finished creating the world. So it's logical to say that the purpose of all of these chain of worlds, the purpose of creation is for our world, and the purpose of our world is people. Further, whoa, what just happened? Oh, why did that go? I don't know. Furthermore, since our world is the goal of divine revelation and man is the object or goal of this world, it follows that the fate of the world is closely linked with that of man. So the purpose of man is the purpose of the world. Okay. Now let's continue on the top of 29. Our sages said, and this is in the Midrash, God desired to have an abode in the lower world. God wanted a home in the lowest world, lower in the sense of corporeality, as we have explained above, that our world is the lowest. Rabbi Shner Zalman explains this statement in the following words. It was his will to derive pleasure from the subjugation of the Sitra Achra, which, if you look at note 7, Sitra Achra, literally the other side, this is the Kabbalistic term for all forces of evil not being the side of holiness. So God gets this pleasure out of people subjugating the evil, the Sitra Achra, which is in Judaism, like they say in Christianity, the evil is kind of like it's this force that's outside of God, like competing with God, as if now. From our perspective, once we were talking in the beginning about like creations that have to be here and that don't have to be here, not creations, but existence. God's existence is an existence of he has to be here and we don't have to be here. And so the same thing, there could be a world without evil. There could be. And not only that, that's the purpose of creation. The purpose of creation is to get rid of the evil. So the evil is not an opposing force to God. It's not an independent contractor. Evil is an employee of God. And there's elsewhere in Tanya that the Alter Rebbe says that evil is actually like it's an example of a king who had a son, a prince, who the prince was raised in the palace and never had any trials and tribulations. And the king wanted to test his son, so he hired a harlot to try and seduce the prince. So now what's the situation of this harlot? On the one hand, she is trying her best to get the prince to sin, but on the inside, she's really hoping that he doesn't, because she's really just an employee of God, of the king. And so the same thing, the evil in the world is an employee of God to try and tempt us to sin, because that's the purpose of creation, for us to overcome the temptation. But okay, and so this is part of the purpose of the world. And as we're going to continue, this is in the middle of 29. It is in the nature of good to do good. God is good, and therefore God gave existence and life to the worlds and creatures. Now, of course, God could have stopped short of our world in the process of divine emanation, and could have concluded the creation with the higher form of creatures, such as angels. But a candle shines brightest in the dark, and the superiority of light is most appreciated in comparison with darkness. It was God's desire that he be recognized even by the earthly and material creatures, and that the light of God be revealed in this dark world by the subjugation of the forces of defiance. So this is, why does God get pleasure from this? I don't know. They say it's kind of like when the king will have a parrot. You know, the rich people, they get parrots that can talk. And you go ask yourself, why do you need to get a parrot that can talk? You can go find a very simple person who can talk much better than the parrot. So the thing is that there's nothing novel about a person talking. People are supposed to talk. But when you see a bird talking, birds are not supposed to talk. So when you see a bird talking, wow, that's so cool, this bird can talk. You wouldn't go say, wow, this person, he's able to talk. That's unbelievable. The person's able to, of course not. So the same thing, God created a world. And this world, we're meant to fall to temptation. We're meant to be, that's how we're created, that we struggle. We struggle to do the right thing. And then when a person overcomes that evil inclination, when a person makes the right choice and does the right thing, wow, that's unbelievable. See, I still have paint. I was doing some paint up there, but also the rats out on the roof. And and that is what God gets pleasure from. That's why God created the world. And so, on the last paragraph of 29, here lies the function of a human being. When a person eats, drinks, not for the simple purpose of satisfying hunger and thirst like an animal, but with the intention of having strength to fulfill the divine laws, when he toils and labors not merely to live in comfort, but to comply with the commandment of charity, in order to enable others to live as well, then the food he eats and digests, and the energy he derives from them, are applied precisely to the purpose of converting the material into the spiritual. Wow, this is a short paragraph here. So now, part of this is a journey. Part of it's an internal journey. I have my own struggles. I have my struggles. Should I be just watching the news and wasting time, or learning Torah? Okay, it's a struggle every single time. You probably had a struggle. Should I come to the class? Should I not come to the class? I'm too tired. I'm too hungry. I'm too lazy. There's always an excuse not to. So part of it is for people to overcome their internal struggle. But then there's something beyond that. It's not just about the internal struggle. It's about revealing the purpose of creation. Because the question is, why did God create everything else? When I use the things that God put in the world for a mitzvah, that is its purpose. I'm making that thing holy. And not only that, we said when a person eats, now eating is something, when you're talking about a class, coming to learn Torah, so that's something that's kind of like obvious. It's like either I'm watching the news or I'm watching the rabbi. And so maybe he's a little bit entertaining, the news is probably more entertaining, so I'm having to struggle and I make the choice, whatever choice I make. That's the internal struggle. However, when you do a mitzvah, let's talk about eating. Eating is something that you have to do. It's not a choice. You got to eat. You're going to eat. The question is, why am I eating? So we can be like animals. Animals just eat. They do it just because that's what they're programmed to do. Animals don't have free will. They're instinctual. They're just programmed. They do it. They procreate. They eat. They sleep. It's all. They don't think. They don't have the ability to think about it. It's just what they do. People, we kind of also, yeah, we eat. We also sleep, but we have the ability to be intentional. Excuse me, in our eating and in our sleeping. So therefore, when a person says, I'm about to eat, if you take a moment, and I think we spoke about this a lot, we had a course on meditations a couple years ago. Some people didn't like meditate. I'm not a meditative kind of guy, but we spoke a lot about this. How a person, when I sit down to eat, call it meditation, call it intentional, call it, I don't know what it is. They have other words for it today. I'm going to be deliberate in my eating. I'm going to think to myself, before I start eating, why am I eating? And the answer should be so that I have energy to serve God. So that I have energy to do mitzvahs. That's why I'm eating. That's the purpose of my eating. And when I'm intentional like that, the eating is a totally different eating. Number one, I'm going to make sure to eat things that are healthy for me. Because things that are junk are not going to help me serve God. And not only that, I'm not going to overeat because I'm going to stop it. The whole purpose, every bite is for the purpose of having energy to serve God. So of course I'm not going to any eating more than that. It's just like an animal. And then and then not only that, but the energy after I finish eating, now I have that energy. I made that, and I'm going to use that energy to study Torah, or to put on tefillin and daven, or to whatever else the mitzvah is, or even to go to work. Again, that's another thing. Remember we had in the meditation course. We also had that a meditation for going to work. Yes, I have to go to work. Why am I going to work? Because I have to. If I don't work, then I won't eat. Or the purpose of going to work is in order to make money. And the purpose of making money is so that I can take part of that money and buy or spend the money on a house and food and clothing in order to serve God, and to give part of the money to tzedakah. And when I give part of my money to tzedakah, I'm actually elevating all of my money. And so when I'm at work, so now by that little tzedakah that I gave, and that being intentional, that as I'm at work, I'm this money is going to go to serve God. So now I've not just elevated I haven't just elevated the $100 or the $1,000 or the $10,000 that I gave to tzedakah. I've elevated my entire day. 40 hours a week have been elevated. And then not only that, then I go home, and in order to support my family, so that I can teach them Torah, so that I can serve God. And these are all now. This is I hope you're getting how like my whole life is now from the moment I wake up until the moment I go to bed, and also in between then when I'm all the time that I'm sleeping. All of that is part of serving God. All of that is making the world holy. And so now, not only did I overcome my internal sitra achra, I overcame my internal battle, the evil inclination that wants to stop me from doing the right thing, but I also elevated my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner, my sleep, my procreation with my wife, and my work, all that time that I'm in work, and even the time I'm resting. When I'm resting, why am I resting? I'm resting right now in order to have energy to serve God. And now I've elevated all of those things. Now, let's take it even a step further than this. We're on the top of page 30. Moreover, when a person fulfills his duty and mission in life, not only does he attain his goal, his own goal in the scheme of creation, but he also helps the rest of the world around him. Good evening, Lori.
Good
Um,
evening.
welcome. We're here on the top of page 30. I'll go back to the top of the page.
Sorry.
No problem. Moreover, when a person fulfills his duty and mission in life, not only does he attain his own goal in the scheme of creation, but he also helps the rest of the world around him, including the animal, organic, and inorganic kingdoms, to attain theirs. For everything that has been created in this world was placed at our service. We depend on the other forms of life, including inanimate. We need the dirt and the concrete and the stucco and the wood and the beams and the rubber, all that. Which also possess a divine spark that gives it energy and keep it in existence for our sustenance. When, for example, we apply the energy we derive from a glass of milk to the fulfillment of our mission in life, then the cow from which the milk came, the meadow upon which the cow is grazed, the very glass from which we drink the milk, and everything and everybody associated with the production of the milk and its conveyance from the farm to the refrigerator have fulfilled their mission. Conversely, if one uses his energy to cheat, kill, or otherwise violate the word of God, he has not merely failed to fulfill his duty in the design of creation, but he has also caused damage to himself as well as to others and to the world around him. This is something you've probably heard me say many times. I quote this chapter a lot. Chapter 1 and 2 were a little bit different. Chapter 4 is going to be a little bit different. But today, this is like bread and butter. This is the purpose of creation. What does a mitzvah do? So now, when I'm when I'm eating, when I'm so that glass of milk. Not only did I elevate the glass of milk, but I also elevated the truck that brought the store and the electric plant that's powering the refrigerator in the store, and also the truck. And the truck has tires that came from India, and there's some guy who's being overworked and making 3 cents a day to make these tires, and he doesn't know what his purpose is. When I am drinking this milk with the intention to serve God, so now I just gave that person and that machine and the person who made the machine and serviced the machine and the energy plants, everything was used, everything was part of making this world. I made all of them holy. I gave all of them purpose. And that's actually the end of the chapter today. We'll do the summary. Our world was the last in a series of creations in which the divine light and life were diminished. Our world is the lowest. It is the furthest away from its divine source, and hence the lowest in the series. One in which the divine light is especially concealed, and where evil can dwell unimpeded. Our world exists for one purpose: to allow man to overcome these forces of darkness and to create a dwelling place for God in our lower world. We accomplish our task by doing good, by consciously fulfilling God's laws. Thereby we simultaneously attain a degree of perfection and help other kingdoms reach their goals. So the same thing with all of the mitzvahs. This is something unique about Judaism, compared to the other religions. We're very practical. We're very material. So whereas other religions focus more on someone's belief or someone's acceptance or someone's other things, Judaism will spend time like we are right now. We're talking about belief and we're studying and we have praying to connect with God. But there's also concrete things. When we pray, I pray every morning. I put on tefillin, and that tefillin is taking a piece of leather and making it holy, so holy that it can't go on the floor, that it can't be just opened up and displayed in public. It's not. It's inappropriate because this is something that's holy. And the same thing with the Torah scroll, and the same thing with the Shabbos candles, and with the kosher food, and with the sukkah, and with the lulav, and with the, I mean, you just go on and on and on. All of the things, the mitzvahs that we do. So to summarize in one sentence, like we did the last weeks, the purpose of creation is to make the world holy. The purpose of mitzvahs is to make the world holy. The first week, we would say the purpose of creation, the purpose of mitzvahs is to teach us self-discipline. That was the first week. The second week, last week, the purpose of mitzvahs is to connect us with God. And this week, the purpose of mitzvahs is to make the world holy, to elevate the world, lift it up. And next week we're going to talk about the purpose of mitzvahs is to bring God down into the world. There are two directions. This week we're talking about going up, that we're lifting the world up to make it holier and fulfill its purpose in creation. And then next week is going to be talking about another, it's the reverse of the same idea, but God coming into the world. Two sides of the same coin. Who would have thought there's so many mitzvahs, so much purpose in these mitzvahs? My gosh. It's like, and so is it, oh, this rabbi says this, that rabbi says, no. It's the purpose of mitzvahs is all of the above. It's doing all of these at the same time. Sometimes we feel one more than the other, but the purpose of mitzvahs is all of them. At this point, if you'd like, you can ask some questions, or you can, if not, like last week, nobody had, well, there was one question last week, Valerie, but besides for that, man, you guys are, is that called a tough crowd or an easy crowd? Anything to say? Go for it, Nan.
I'm just looking at the book, and there are 7 chapters, and we have 6 weeks. So I'm just wondering, is there?
Oh, you know what that means?
1
that
week
means that I
worth
counted
of
wrong.
chapters? So we'll have another week
Yeah,
of our class.
yeah. That means that
Great.
it literally just means I have not. Someone asked me how long it takes to prepare these classes. It took me 10 years to prepare these classes because I've done this book. I spent a lot of time on it before, but I didn't look at it pretty much at all until we printed it. Did you see it? You saw that we printed it on the last page. Go open up the last page. It's exciting. That's it. That's it for today. Good evening, and thanks for coming. See you next week with Hashem's help.
Thank you.
Of course.
Sorry for the late arrival.
No problem. Take care. Good night.